I'm going to wait a little bit as more people get on. I didn't really give a heads up I'm doing this. So, a big day in the Barry Morphew case. If you weren't following my tweets, Barry Morphew will be able to get out of jail on bond, $500,000 cash bond. He can get out on Monday around noon. And the trial will be bounded over the case will be bounded over for a trial. So I'm just going to wait until more people get on real quick. My photographer is actually shooting football right now, so maybe she can join us a little later. It is a cold day out tonight. That's why I'm wearing a jacket here in Colorado. So just tell me, where you're watching from, and what do you guys think of what happened today in the courtroom in Chafee County? And then I'll go over some of my notes as best as I can. Okay, I'm just going to get into it because I don't have much time. So, let me just talk about kind of where people were in the courtroom. Barry's daughters were sitting on the second row. They had a friend with them. And Barry's family members were on the third row. It was Sheila in the corner, Shirley in the corner, then Marcy, then her husband, then Kelly's husband, and then Kelly on the end. I did notice that Macy, one of Barry's daughters, hair was a lot darker. And Barry came in kind of late. They had higher security today. They went through everyone's stuff before they came into the courtroom, a lot more than the 4 days during the preliminary hearing. So it took a lot longer for everyone to get into the courtroom. And so Barry Morphy was wearing like a light gray suit, cowboy boots again, and he was carrying a folder of papers. Anyways, so
phone disconnected.
Oh, sorry. That's Sarah's phone, I think. Okay, so both parties were provided briefs. He was allowing each side to have closing arguments. He said about 20 minutes for each side. He wanted Judge Patrick Morphy really wanted to get done by 5 o'clock, and he did. We were done about 4:30 this afternoon. There was 2 new attorneys that were seated, one at the defense side and then one at the prosecution table as well. The one man on the defense side was named Sean Connolly, and then the gentleman who was a new attorney on the state side, it was named Dan Edwards. The prosecution took the stand first, and it was this new attorney, Dan Edwards. He talked about, prior cases in other states and how those rules would apply to this case. He also talked about a lot about inferences made in this case. And then, Deputy District Attorney Jeff Lindsay also took the stand as well. And he talked, or not the stand, he just talked, the podium, I should say, and he talked about that the murder, the path to the murder started on May 6th with that text message, the chilling text message from Suzanne to Barry Morphew saying, "I'm done. Let's just do this civilly." And Barry's response was that, a divorce was never going to happen, pretty much, is what the prosecution was saying. And then he talked a little bit, the Deputy District Attorney Lindsay said, Barry's first idea when he got to the scene was that it was a mountain lion attack, and said that, he and Suzanne loved each other to death. And the prosecution said that was very chilling, that statement. And then they talked briefly about how Macy suggested to Suzanne to leave Barry. And there was also an interesting text message that was mentioned from Macy to her boyfriend on May 10th. And she said she was sad and scared that her mom didn't reply on Mother's Day to her, and that, you know, she feared that Suzanne and her dad got into a fight. So, I'm going to answer some quick questions real quick. Extra security, that kind of seems like the judge had already made up his mind and expected an upset in the courtroom. I don't know about that. I know that there were some threats made. I had even received some threats, and so the reason why I didn't take a lot of photos at today's hearing outside of the courthouse was because I received some threats, and so I just kind of, as soon as they said the media could come in, I just walked straight in. There was a lot of deputies around, so that's why I didn't have a lot of text messages. The first thing I woke up to this morning was someone asking about me who I hadn't spoken to in a really long time, and I had heard that there was going to be this mob, that they wanted to confront me, and so I just kind of stayed out of the front courthouse area until I was told I could go into the courtroom. So back to the court, what happened in the courtroom. So the prosecution is giving their closing arguments, and you know, the Deputy District Attorney Lindsay is saying that Barry hid evidence and of marital problems by deleting text messages. And I'm at a football game and people are wondering what I'm doing in the car. And also they made a point to say that Barry also mentioned that the May 9th, the night before Mother's Day, that it was a perfect night. And this is, you know, Suzanne had told Sheila, one of her best friends, that Barry would always look like the victim, and you know, she was always the bad guy. The prosecution also noted that during this whole preliminary hearing, it was Suzanne that had been on trial during this entire case. Her affair was, you know, mentioned throughout a lot of it. There was fighting in their marriage, and that Barry would manipulate Suzanne by threatening suicide on himself. This is something that the Deputy District Attorney Lindsay had mentioned in his closing arguments. So they go through a timeline of events up to, you know, May 9th, when the prosecution believes that he killed Suzanne Morphew. They say that, you know, May 6th is what happened when she said, "I'm done," the text message, "I'm done, let's just do this civilly." They say that May 7th there was fighting in the marriage. They go May 8th, there was, you know, she had created a list of 50 grievances, and she was concerned over her health due to the marriage with Barry Morphew. She texted her sister about the abusive emotion and the abuse, that it was emotionally and physically. She was upset that she allowed this behavior to continue, and so she called Barry Morphew around 10:09 a.m. This is after the text, you know, saying "I'm done." That was May 6th. So this is May 9th. She supposedly calls Barry, and she tells Barry the grievances, and that, you know, why should they still be married? And you know, why they can no longer be married because of these lists of grievances. This is a list of 50 grievances that she supposedly had wrote down. she had sent to Sheila Oliver, and she also had told Barry Morphew on May 9th, in the morning, 10:09 a.m. It was a phone call between Barry Morphew and Suzanne. It lasted 26 minutes and 40 seconds. And Barry Morphew allegedly said, "I love you, Suzanne." That was his response. You know, he portrayed an acceptance of her grievances and that she wants to just move on. So, you know, the state says that, you know, from May 8th through 9, they were civil, but like they were civil between each other. They talked about going on a hike. They went to a pizza place. They visited some real estate. But Suzanne had discussed with her lover, Jeff Libler, that she wanted to get out, you know. So Barry and Suzanne are appearing to want to sell the Salida home, the Maysville home, excuse me, and that Suzanne had sent a picture of a property in Salida. Again, they mentioned a little bit about how Barry wanted to go on a hike. She asked him when. She also asked about getting different summer tires for her Range Rover, kind of mentioning that she wanted to leave, that she needed different summer tires. They talked a little bit about how Barry allegedly went around the property and comes back, and the prosecution believes he was removing the hunting and game cameras around the home. Suzanne had texted Jeff Libler saying that, you know, she's once again alone, and you know, sends the last known proof of life photo to Jeff Libler, and then asks him to, you know, get on the WhatsApp, and that was the last communication to anyone. So this is stuff that we've heard before, so nothing really new. Again, this is closing arguments from the prosecution. And the prosecution says Mr. Morphew is not going to let Suzanne divorce him. He said, "You better love me now because it's for life." Around 2:44 p.m., the prosecution believes that he loaded a syringe, put it in his pocket, put his phone in airplane mode, and that's what triggered the murder. There's, you know, data from his phone saying that he was moving around the home. Barry agreed that he was moving around the home, even the fact that he was shooting chipmunks. He admitted to shooting chipmunks. You know, the prosecution also mentions the defense wounds on his arms. Those markings were photographed 3 days after. It was, I believe, May 13th. And then, you know, they also speak about, or the prosecution brings up the fact that Barry admitted, you know, throwing away tranquilizer material in one of the many trash runs he had made to Broomfield. They also mentioned that he had said the words, "I don't recall," when he was asked questions 98 times. And they even said that, according to Barry, that when people say when they don't want to tell the truth, they would respond with, "I don't recall." And this is something that Barry himself did 98 times. The prosecution also made it known that the needle cap is a pivotal piece of evidence in this case. And Barry, again, admitted to the, you know, tranquilizer material from the workbench that he had possibly thrown away in his trash runs to Broomfield. The prosecution said the bike scene, the crime scene, was staged. The entire thing about the bike being near, you know, County Road 225 and Highway 50. Evidence is that the bike was ghost-ridden off the side of the hill. There was no damage to the bike. There was no vegetation damage, really. There was no sign of blood. The helmet, they admitted, the prosecution said that was staged. It was 1.7 miles west where Barry himself allegedly admitted turning left on Highway 50. So he was in that area where this bike helmet was found. And the prosecution also made it known that in this area, if you take a bike ride, you need water. And typically she would always wear sunglasses and her headphones when she would go on these bike rides. And the camel pack and the sunglasses were left in her car, in the garage. They also spoke a little bit about, what evidence they found in the fireplace. And Barry allegedly told investigators we had burned stuff earlier that week. And, the prosecution was specifically asked, or not the prosecution, but the law enforcement that was working on this case, they were specifically told that Suzanne would have a Bible and a journal, and then, the title of the book was Courage. It was an Al-Anon book that it was kind of like a journal, one of those workbooks that you would do. I have it in my notes somewhere. The title, let me see if I can find it. Courage to Change is the title name of this Al-Anon book. And investigators found the Al-Anon book, titled Courage to Change, and the Bible, but they couldn't find the journal. And so they believe that the things that were in the fireplace that were burned, one being like pieces of a binding of a book, was the journal. So him disposing of evidence, pretty much, is what they're saying in that instance. And then also they brought up the 5 trash runs on the way to Broomfield as being Barry Morphew, disposing of evidence. He also, the prosecution also talked about how he left early on Mother's Day, and he doesn't kiss Suzanne goodbye and say goodbye, because she's not there. She's already been killed, is what the prosecution was leading to. They mentioned the tranquilizer evidence. They mentioned how Gruesing had spoke to the biologist, and they had said that, if a person were to be tranquilized, that the person would go down and have hypoxia and then sound like they're snoring. And Barry, the last thing he had remembers about Suzanne was that she was asleep and snoring. So they made that connection. So now the defense, it's their turn to have closing arguments. So I have to go back in my notes real quick. Okay. So the closing arguments is given by this new attorney by the defense, and his name is Sean Connolly. And he was very articulate. He emphasized certain parts of, he really honed in on what the state just gave, and he reacted to what the state said. It wasn't as much scripted, I felt like, than the state's. The defense says, the prosecution has failed. Initially, they had said that Barry was the one adding the guys on Facebook, and now that they're saying that it was Suzanne that wanted to have this freedom from the marriage, and she was the one that was adding 28 men, or 23, I believe, 23 people on Facebook, and many of which were men. They said that there's been no witness throughout this whole thing, and no body, obviously. the attorney Conley, he mentions a case, People versus Manson. It was a court of appeals upheld a no body conviction, not based on conjecture though. Probable cause and proof evident presumption great needed. You know, the probable cause, it has to pass scrutiny. It was a Hunter case. Okay, this is the part where the defense really honed in on what the prosecution had just given. They talked about how, you know, the prosecution had said May 6th was a chilling day because of the text message that pretty much made the path to murder, is what the prosecution is saying. And the defense attorney was saying Barry Morphew didn't respond violently when this text message from Suzanne saying, I'm done, I want to, you know, end this civilly. He didn't respond saying, like, I want to kill you or anything like that. There was not any threats made, the defense said. They even said the alleged murder didn't happen on May 6th, but rather May 9th, according to the prosecution. He starts talking about how days after that text message, you know, there was no dispute as far as it was a fine night, is what Suzanne had told Jeff Libler on May 8th. But again, Suzanne allegedly told Jeff Libler that she wanted to be his wife on May 8th. And on May 9th, you know, the defense says, you know, Barry went to work, he did his job, he comes home from lunch, they meet, nothing bad happens, he leaves for a few hours, comes back home, and then kills Suzanne Morphew in a matter of minutes. And that's like, the defense is saying there's no way, pretty much, that he had the time to commit the crime that this prosecution is stating. Now he's talking about how the opportunity that Barry Morphew had to kill Suzanne. In the state's final arguments, you know, they had mentioned that, you know, Barry Morphew loves to hunt, and that Suzanne was like an animal, and that, you know, Barry Morphew hunted Suzanne down like an animal. The defense then argues that, you know, at first they said it was a gun that Barry Morphew used to shoot Suzanne with the tranquilizer gun, and now they're just saying that Barry Morphew just used the syringe. Like, which is it? You know, so the defense is really saying, like, so how did, you know, Barry Morphew allegedly kill Suzanne? And then how did he dispose of her body? There's not enough time in that day, the defense is saying. You know, they're saying there's no evidence of any of this. Yeah, somehow Barry had means and ability to dispose of her without anyone finding it during hours of searches. You know, they talked a little bit about how many searches there was and how many search warrants they had. So then the defense, again, this is a new attorney for the defense. His name is Sean Connolly. He mentions 10 reasons we know the investigation was result-driven and disregarded the prosecution theory. So the first one was DNA. No dispute that there was foreign DNA in her car, in her Range Rover, on the glove compartment. They had sex assault DNA that excluded Barry. Then the second one was Salida Spa. There was 18 unaccounted miles on Barry's truck. And the defense is saying he went to Salida Stove and Spa. Like, that could be the 18 missing miles. And even they have people from Salida Stove and Spa that said, yes, we talked to Barry Morphew. But the state is saying they have their time wrong of when that happened, when that conversation happened. The third reason is Jeff Libler. He takes a few months to figure out, the law enforcement takes a few months to figure out who Jeff Libler is. And then when they do find him out, which was months after Suzanne, 6 months, I believe, after Suzanne went missing, he allegedly deleted his apps that had conversations between Suzanne and him. And he also, his phone was broken that he had communication with. And he never came forward on his own, is what the defense is really pointing out. The fourth reason is Suzanne's Facebook. At first, the prosecution was trying to say that Barry hacked her phone and did it. And now today, they said that, she did it herself. The fifth reason is Mallory sheets. The fifth reason is two. It's Mallory sheets and the needle cap found in the dryer. Why is Suzanne washing her sheets? Because of a friend was supposed to be coming over after their road trip. And then also, there was no DNA from Barry Morphew on this needle cap, the syringe that was found in the dryer. But Suzanne's DNA allegedly was on it, is what the defense attorney was saying, which I had not heard. I believe in the 4-day preliminary hearing, the Suzanne's DNA on the needle cap, I don't think that was mentioned at all. I do believe that it was mentioned that Barry Morphew's DNA was not on the needle cap. But again, it was found in the dryer, so maybe it had already gone through a wash and a dryer. But I don't know. Let me see how many. Now we're on to the sixth reason, is the chlorine smell in the hotel room that Barry Morphew allegedly stayed in the day of Mother's Day, the day that Suzanne Morphew was reported missing. They had said, Jeffrey Puckett had smelled this, as well as Morgan Gentile had smelled this. And they said it was so strong that their eyes started watering. And so, but again, the defense says, well, his room was right above the pool, so of course it's going to smell like chlorine. Now, the seventh reason that this defense attorney gave was there was coffee. And that's something that Suzanne always did in the morning, was drink coffee. And there was, and Barry Morphew doesn't drink coffee, but Suzanne does. And there was a half a cup of coffee on the counter, proving that she was allegedly there, I guess, on May 10th, the morning of her disappearance. The eighth reason was Barry Morphew's cooperation. One of the... Oh, hi, Sarah.
Well, hello. Hey, everybody.
One of the reasons, one of the investigators that took the stand, Andy Rorick, with the Chafee County Sheriff's Office, he had said when they initially, had the house and they were asking Barry Morphew to come in real quickly and look for a piece of clothing of Suzanne so that they could give it to dogs for, smell, so they could search with these dogs. And they said, he was acting strange in the home. This was supposedly the last place he saw Suzanne. He wasn't calling her name. He wasn't calling her cell phone. He was just doing what he was told by investigators. And again, the prosecution found this odd, that, he wasn't calling for her or calling her cell phone. He acted strange while he was looking for this one piece of clothing for Suzanne. But again, the defense was like, he was doing the instructions he was told to do. He was cooperating. And they also said that he's been cooperating, doing 30 interviews with, or 30 hours of interviews with the law enforcement. The ninth, sorry, I need a drink of water real quick. The ninth reason was the dart gun. It was allegedly the murder weapon, but it didn't work properly. And then the 10th reason was, it was something that was really strange. He had said something about, on page 126 of the affidavit, there was this metaphor that was really ugly, and there was no basis, and it was offensive. But he didn't go into exactly what the metaphor actually was. And so I did not understand what his 10th reason was, because he didn't read out the metaphor from the affidavit. So maybe that is something we will obviously get to read come Monday, when the sealed affidavit will become unsealed, and that will be online. Okay, so the defense ended saying, the affidavit is misleading. It's based on assumption without proof of evidence. Their proof was not clear and strong. It was muddy and weak, is what this defense attorney was saying. Okay, so now it's the judge's turn to give his notes kind of throughout the preliminary hearing. But before I talk about the judge, the defense says it cannot continue because there's no body, so there is no way to prove murder. And this part of the hearing is for probable cause. So there was three reasons the judge said that, Suzanne could have been obviously murdered by Barry Morphew. He's the last person to see her alive, or she left voluntarily, or someone that obviously the state doesn't know about killed her. Are you kidding? Are you okay? You're just doing it out here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Just because I have to be able to hear it.
Okay.
Sometimes I don't want to
interrupt you. Sorry. She's cutting football highlights, so I just want to make sure she was okay. Again, the judge said this is not a trial. It is just to show that there is probable cause that Barry Morphew could possibly and may have done this. The judge said that he could find probable cause in a case like this without a body, as long as there is probable cause and strong evidence. The judge also said there is a reasonable belief if the defendant may have committed the crime. The rules of evidence are relaxed at a preliminary hearing versus a trial, and he said this is not a trial again. He also mentioned that finding out that she was having an affair gives him motive. Feeling of hurt, anger, jealousy, desperation, it could lead someone who normally is a normal person, leads someone to do harm. Because someone has harmed him, is what the judge was saying. So the judge found that Barry Morphew, he found probable cause that Barry Morphew may have murdered his wife for the counts for counts 1 and 2, which is murder in the first degree and tampering with a deceased body. And counts 3, 4, and 5 were not eligible for preliminary hearing. The judge talked about how Suzanne was in a long affair with Jeff beginning, I believe, yeah, she was in a long affair. Sorry, I'm trying to read my notes as well as talk at the same time. And it had lasted nearly 2 years, and that she had visited him 6 times, at least 6 times in other states. And the judge also said that the court can infer that, if Barry Morphew was aware of this affair, would cause him to murder Suzanne. The judge also mentioned that Suzanne wanted a divorce, and he knew that, allegedly, Barry Morphew knew that, and he could have reacted in an emotional state, an emotionally charged manner. Oh, yeah, I'm hearing that. So I'm looking over your guys' messages. So, during the court proceedings, right now we're hearing from the judge and what his notes were. Barry Morphew allegedly said, when I'm dead, which won't be long, you will be taken care of, to his daughters or to Suzanne. The judge said that desperate people act irrationally and can hurt other people, especially those who cause their pain. So, the judge thought that the motivations for Barry Morphew to kill Suzanne was an affair, as well as that she wanted a divorce. The judge also mentioned that there has been no body, so no one has heard from her in over a year. And, her photo when she went missing has appeared on TV everywhere and has never been cited or found. Her camelback again and glasses were in her car. She always rode with them, the judge pointed out. She was a stay-at-home mom with no job in a couple years. She had no outside source of income to hide money and then use it to disappear, is what the judge is saying. And even Barry himself had mentioned to law enforcement that he was her ATM and her source of money. And she always had 3 items. Again, it was her journal, her Al-Anon book, and her Bible. And one of them was missing, her journal. Her credit card, cash, and ID were still in her purse, which was found in a garage. She was a dedicated mother, the judge had pointed out. She had mentioned, once Macy is graduated, then I could probably get a divorce. She had put her children's interests ahead of her own and stayed in the marriage for their benefit, is what the judge had pointed out and noted. She was close to her family as well and wouldn't intentionally cause them harm by not communicating with them. So again, this is the judge trying to say that, Suzanne would not voluntarily leave. And the judge also mentioned, Suzanne used her phone all the time, and her lack of communication showed that she might have died. Her silence. And again, her lover, Jeff Libler, continued to message her and wasn't getting any response. And her phone had no activity since May 9th. And still, her phone has not been found either. A quote that was really interesting that the judge had said, he said, quote, "When her phone went silent, Mrs. Morphew also went silent." And he also noted that the last interaction on Suzanne Morphew's phone was shortly before Barry Morphew came home. excuse me, sorry. It was shortly before Barry Morphew had left the work site in Salida. The judge also mentioned that, you know, she was fearful of Barry, according to text to Sheila, her best friend. She didn't feel safe alone, and she even told her friend that Barry Morphew was abusive. She talked to Macy about getting a restraining order against Barry Morphew, and then, you know, the judge also mentioned the list of grievances. He also said that, you know, Barry Morphew had one time chased her around a resort, and it troubled Suzanne. The judge also mentioned the door frame to the master bedroom, that it had been busted out. It looked like someone had forced themselves into the bedroom. The judge also mentioned a trip between, it was a trip that Barry had left the Maysville home, and Suzanne and Sheila was at the house, and they saw lights coming down the driveway, and they were so scared that they called the cops, and then later they realized it was just Barry. And, you know, Sheila, the best friend of Suzanne, thought he was spying on them, trying to catch Suzanne cheating. Suzanne allegedly talked about abuse months prior to Mother's Day and was afraid of him, you know, and he wasn't, and mentioning that he wasn't stable either. The judge talks about Barry Morphew's cell phone data, that he was moving around the home, and then it went on airplane mode. Again, Jeff Libler is sending messages to Suzanne with no reply. And then, you know, he mentions from 2:47 to 10:17 p.m. the phone is on airplane mode. That's almost 7 hours, and that's ample time to dispose of Morphew's body. The judge believes that Barry Morphy used the dart, and the phone pings around the home show that Barry was chasing Suzanne while the tranquilizer serum was working. Allegedly, Barry had told investigators that he had peed in the middle of the night, but his truck showed activity. And he had told investigators that he was up a little before 5 a.m., but his truck activity showed that he was up around 3 a.m. They talk a little bit about the half a mile from, or a mile, or 1.7 miles from, or half a mile, excuse me, from intersection 225. It wasn't damaged. Looked like it had just been tossed, and it was not hidden. And the judge had mentioned, you know, Barry had turned left at the intersection. He had told investigators he had turned left, and his truck data had also shown that he had turned that way as well. And again, they talk a little bit about how Barry Morphew had mentioned that he was following a bull elk so that he could get their antlers. And the judge had mentioned from testimony from the Andy Rorick, one of the Chafee County Sheriff's Office deputies, that, you know, that time of year, there were no antlers. And it was also in a pitch dark area. And how could you see a herd of elk in that area? And Barry Morphew didn't turn around for 3 miles. So the judge says that the court can infer that Barry Morphew is the one who disposed of the helmet. And again, they talked about how Barry Morphew had no reason to be turning left onto Highway 50 when he needed to go towards Broomfield for this job. The judge also mentions how Barry Morphew often changed his statements or left out information and added it later. So it shows evidence of untruthfulness. He also mentions that, Barry Morphew had mentioned in an interview that he hadn't used the tranquilizer gun, but then later on he said he used it to shoot deer from their Colorado home. And then in one interview, Barry Morphy had told investigators that they had never left the home on May 9th. But then in another interview, he said that they went for a hike near Foose's lake. So just contradictory of stories to law enforcement. Another contradictory to his story is that he had told investigators that he only went to the hotel and McDonald's and then the job site, but then obviously investigators found that he made 5 different trash runs, and one of which was 40 minutes at a men's warehouse. And the judge said this powerful quote. He said, "Why would Barry Morphew leave Suzanne, the love of his life, he called his angel, alone on Mother's Day, on a day he knew he couldn't work without proper tools, to just sit in his hotel room for 5 hours?" And so he said, court does believe probable cause is there. So now this is when he talks about the proof evident presumption great justification. So he said the court is to act as a neutral fact finder. He said that no presumption is in favor of the prosecution. Are you done? What? Oh, good. The judge even said the case could go either way in front of a jury. He said the court, he talked a little bit about Suzanne's online bank account, and a little bit about the $70K missing from the safe. And the judge also mentioned that Suzanne was a good secret keeper because her best friends, didn't even know of this affair that she was having for nearly 2 years with Jeff Libler. So there was 3 possible outcomes. I had 3 possible options, one of which was Suzanne was killed by Barry Morphew. She purposely disappeared. She voluntarily disappeared. Or 3, that she was kidnapped and then killed by someone else. The judge pretty much said, she wouldn't voluntarily disappear because she loved her daughter so much and she loved her family. I don't know what Sarah's doing. So when it comes down to it, the judge says there was no DNA evidence linking Barry Morphew to the crime. There was no blood anywhere. He brought up that, there was DNA from an unknown male. There was 3, DNAs from an unknown male that was found on Suzanne's glove box. So he pretty much says proof is not evident and its presumption is not great. So bond is allowed. The state is asking for a $10 million cash-only bond. They're concerned with his ties to the community that pretty much have gone away because he sold the what is it called, the Maysville property. I was trying to think of the exact street. Puma Path, off Puma Path Street. And there's, they were implying that he could leave because, his business is kind of gone away.
So there's only 2 minutes after the game, and I'm still waiting on Julie to make sure that everything was sent. So I'm just gonna wait so that way I can text her the final score.
Okay.
And then we can head back. That way you can finish doing this.
Okay. Do you want to stay in here?
Oh, no, you're good. I'm just going to go
Okay.
watch the game so I know when it's over.
Okay. And then the prosecution also mentioned that people, like many of the witnesses, has expressed concerns of their safety, mentioning, because now this evidence is out there, some of which were informants to law enforcement, that they were concerned that Barry might come after them. And the prosecution even said Barry Morphew, is a significant danger to flee. Because he doesn't really have ties to the community. And the defense says, the court needs to set a reasonable bond, and that a $10 million bond is just not reasonable. They mentioned wanting a $50,000 bond. I guess they had quoted some cases similar, and they had said, $50,000 to $200,000 bond was kind of the range that they had mentioned, and they went with the lowest, which was $50,000 bond. And the judge came back and said, $10 million is too high, $50,000 is too low. So the judge sets the bond, and he was like, I want something in the middle, and he sets the bond at $500,000 cash only bond. And even the state mentions, the sale of the property of Puma Path was $1.7 million. So they were like, he's sold that. The prosecution believed that Barry Morphew had at least $3 million. And so they wanted at least $3 million. But the judge set the bond at $500,000 cash only. So $500,000. There was protection orders granted. And the defense didn't argue that at all. They said that Barry Morphew would be okay with that. They said it would be Cassidy Cordova. This is a former employee of Barry Morphew's, as well as Morgan Gentile, another former employee, who both Cassidy and Morgan Gentile were both part of working on Mother's Day weekend in Broomfield for Barry Morphew. The three siblings of Suzanne Morphew, Melinda Mormon, well, she's been married, so she's not going by Mormon anymore, but David Mormon and Andy Mormon. So David and Andy are Suzanne's brothers, and then Melinda is Suzanne's sister. Another person who will be on the protection order is Jeff Libler and his family, Holly Wilson and her family, Sheila Oliver and her family. Holly Wilson and Sheila Oliver are friends of Suzanne's. Brad Oswald, and this is the first time we had heard his name in court, and I believe he was a friend of Barry's, had visited Barry months after Suzanne had went missing, and visited him at their house in off of Puma Path before Barry Morphew had sold the home. This was really interesting, the protection order against Jean and Martin Ritter. Now these names, they're the ones, Jean Ritter is the one who, initially called the Chafee County Sheriff's Office reporting Suzanne missing and wanted a welfare check. And so these are the neighbors of Barry Morphew and Suzanne Morphew off of Puma Path, the Puma Path home. The defense really wanted Barry Morphew to be able to live in Gunnison, which I believe Mallory Morphew lives in Gunnison, and so I think he wanted to live near his two daughters, and the judge was like, well, he needs to reside in Chafee County. The court says he's our responsibility. We need to keep tabs on him, so he needs to reside in Chafee County. So the judge made that known. The prosecution also brought up a case out of Indiana involving Barry Morphew and an alleged assault, but the defense said, that was actually a disorderly conduct case, and that case was dismissed. So really, Barry Morphew didn't have any criminal charges against him prior to this first-degree murder charge. the defense really talked about how since his arrest on May 5th of 2021, Barry Morphew has been made a spectacle, a public spectacle. He's been wrongly defamed. He has sustained great financial loss because of this. So the defense was saying it would be really hard for him to make money at this time in Chafee County. But the judge was like, nope, we need him in Chafee County. He must stay in Chafee County. They are giving him an ankle monitor. And the judge said it didn't have a GPS tracking on it, but it would notify the court if he were to leave Chafee County. They took away his passport, so he had to surrender his passport so he couldn't leave the country. And they also told him that he had to surrender all of his weapons, his guns. You know, Iris Eaton, one of Barry Morphew's attorneys, said he has only been charged. He needs to be treated innocent. So could he please live in Gunnison, where his daughter resides? And again, the judge said no, he needs to live in Chafee County. So they said that he couldn't get out on bond today because of the people who take the bond and things like that, the clerks or whatever, they are already gone for the day on Friday. So he would have to be able to be bonded out on Monday. And he said it would have to be, he can't post bond until noon on Monday because there's no private probation here today, is what the judge was saying. Then they talked about a trial, and they asked both sides how long did they think a trial would be, and they said, the state said at least 4 weeks, and the defense also agreed. So then they were looking at each other's calendars, and they decided that the trial date for Barry Morphew would be May 3rd until June 1st of 2022. And I think this was interesting. The Deputy District Attorney, Jeff Lindsay, had said, this in May, that's the anniversary of when Suzanne went missing. It's Mother's Day. He even chuckled and said it's my anniversary, but that's not obviously enough to not have it then. So they decided to have it in the month of May. Barry Morphew also entered a not guilty plea, and they also brought up some motions that the defense had filed yesterday. They decided that the motion hearing would be held November 9th at 1:30 until 3:30. One motion was because of a discovery violation that the defense has filed a motion for, as well as, I don't know if the car's actually on. And the other one is a motion of violation of the court order to limit pretrial publicity.
I just don't want that to fall.
Oh, if it falls, it falls. It's okay.
Okay.
Here, so you can drive.
Oh, you're good if you want to
Put on my seatbelt.
Hi.
Sarah's in the car now.
Hi.
So you don't just have to listen to me and my voice. I'm about to lose my voice.
I was shooting some high school football.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to take questions now. I've kind of gone through all the notes. So, I forgot to talk about the affidavit. Okay, so the affidavit, both sides kind of gave their opinion as to why they believed whether to seal it, to keep it sealed, or to unseal it. Obviously, the defense was wanting it to remain sealed. And the defense said, and the prosecution, said that it should be unsealed. We talked a lot about the evidence here in the preliminary hearings, so why not just let it out, Can everyone see me okay? Well, is this backlight bad?
Oh, yeah, that's not supposed to be on.
Do you want me to turn it off?
Yep.
Okay.
You can turn this one back on if you need to.
Can you drive?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you're good.
So, at one point the judge had said, the meat of the evidence have already been disclosed in this 4-day preliminary hearing. So he also mentioned that the court had already redacted the parts that needed to be redacted. And then the defense attorney, Drew Nelson, she was like, well, we brought our own affidavit with our own redactions that we think the court should release. And the judge was like, okay, we can take what, the arrest affidavit that you redacted and keep it as a note, but we're gonna release the one that the court redacted. You can chime in whenever. Hello. We're still in the parking lot though.
I apologize. It's like a dirt parking lot, so if we're a little shaky, that's why.
Hey, at least we have self-service though here.
That's true. For now.
The defense also mentioned that the arrest affidavit is written like a tabloid, and the target audience was more aimed at the media and the public rather than the judge who signed off on the arrest affidavit. And again, Judge Patrick Morphy is the one that signed off on the arrest affidavit. And the judge also mentioned the reasons why it was kept sealed initially. It was to keep it sealed because, there were witnesses that their names hadn't been released yet. What?
It's just so bumpy.
Yeah, sorry. It's so bumpy. And the judge again mentioned that, during this preliminary hearing, most of the information was disclosed and then reported on by the media. The court did recognize the unusual amount of attention this case has in the community and across the country. Oh, and I thought this was very interesting. The judge had said something about how, they kept the affidavit sealed so that the defense could interview witnesses for themselves, and he thought that since it has been sealed this whole time, it was ample amount of time for the defense to... What are you doing? Oh, okay. For the defense to do those interviews. He also mentions the Morphew girls. They were considered victims, needed the opportunity to learn or not learn what was in the arrest affidavit before the public found out. And the girls, again, were in the preliminary hearing every single day in the courtroom. So they were...
Oh, there it goes.
So they were listening to everything. Oh. Sorry, guys. Okay, we should be good now. Okay.
Hopefully.
We're on a paved road now. Okay. All right, so the trial's going to be at least 4 weeks, starting May 3rd of 2022 and going to June 1st of 2022 because of, what was it?
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day weekend. Oh. Oh no. Sorry, guys. We need one of those, like, stickers on the car. All right. Since you weren't in the car when I talked all about our notes, do you want to say anything? Anything that stuck out to you?
I definitely felt like the attorney that they had for the closing arguments, I feel...
Sean Connolly?
Yes. I thought he did a much better job of presenting, like, their side of it versus the state. They both brought in new people, which I didn't fully understand.
I didn't understand that either.
Because they weren't in any of the preliminary hearing whatsoever, so I thought that was really interesting. But I definitely did think the defense attorney did a much better job than the state. I thought it was really interesting, too, the polar opposite amounts that both sides thought was appropriate for the bond. You've got $10 million versus $50,000, and I thought it was really interesting hearing their explanation as to why, they went with those dollar amounts and kind of how the judge came up with the final decision on that. I did agree with his decision, though, to unseal the affidavit because, like she just mentioned, the majority of what's in there, I'm sure there's little details and things that obviously we don't know about, but the majority of it was talked about in the preliminary hearing. So I feel like to keep it sealed, I mean, if you're doing it for the sake of having a fair trial and having, you know, an unbiased jury, there's already so much that's been announced to the public. I feel like it's going to be difficult anyways. So keeping it sealed doesn't really do a whole lot, in my opinion.
Yeah, and again, this arrest affidavit is like 129 pages.
Yeah.
And so that will be released online around noon, I believe, on Monday is when the earliest the judge said that it would be online. The judge said that there will be redactions on it that the court has made, you know, redacting social media accounts and minors or things like that.
Personal information.
Personal information, yeah. Let's talk about, well, you weren't in the courtroom. I was in the courtroom, and I haven't really talked about the emotion in the courtroom. Throughout the judge's findings, I mean, you got to remember that everyone is still wearing a mask, so you can't really see people's emotions. You can only see, like, their eyes, and that's pretty much it. And so the family of Barry Morphew, they were just kind of listening. The daughters kept their legs crossed and just, you know, looked forward. It wasn't until they found out that Barry Morphew would get bond that they started crying and started hugging each other, embracing one another, congratulating. You know, they're just happy that there's a possibility that, you know, Barry Morphew is going to get bond and that he could go home and be with his daughters. And so, and then we took like a recess. So there was for the family to go out in the hallway and talk and hug each other and, you know, just kind of celebrate the fact that Barry Morphew, since, you know, May 5th has been in be able to come home to his daughters. And so that was interesting. And then when they found out the exact bond amount, they were happy with it, I believe. I mean, and even at the end, one of the ladies who was in the courtroom that I believe is a family friend, she said, you know, he could stay at my place. So it was just a happy day for the Morphew family, I believe, like in the courtroom. That's just the vibe I got. There was no Mormons in the courtroom. I believe they were all watching from WebEx that they had access to. Only the immediate family members had access to WebEx, and I also know that there's a special occasion, so they all had to be, I believe, out of state. They couldn't come to Colorado for this ruling from the judge.
Real quick, do you want food at all? Because I think our options are Carl's Jr. and Sonic currently, until we get to the Springs.
I'm okay. What do you want to do? So we haven't eaten, so we're talking about food.
I can wait until we get closer if you just don't want anything.
Let's answer some questions. Why not, right? I'm going to have to move it closer. Someone says Denny's. I don't think there's a Denny's.
There's not even a McDonald's around here.
We have a Sonic near us, but...
Slim
yeah,
pickings.
so if you're just watching, I kind of went over my notes. So once I publish this YouTube video, you can go back and watch it. I felt like my tweets today were a lot slower just because of how fast the closing arguments were, and my internet wasn't the greatest today. So I apologize for that, but I tried to go over all my notes tonight in this video. When someone's asking about the gag order, the judge did not place a gag order on the prosecution. It was interesting that the defense brought up, you know, that the DA's office has done interviews, and they even mentioned podcasts, which I didn't know that they had done that. Sorry, I'm trying to look at questions as we are driving. Well, I'm not driving. Someone's asking, how did Barry react to the judge's remarks? When he found out that he was going to get bail and we took a break, when we came back from break, he had his the suit jacket off, and he was kind of more relaxed in his seat. He didn't really show emotion until he had to leave. Again, he's wearing a mask, and so he winked at a family member or family friend, excuse me, and then he also, nodded, and I think you could tell he was smiling just from his eyes. I don't know. It was hard because he had a mask on. Yeah, people are asking if he will have an ankle monitor. Yes, he will have an ankle monitor. Someone's asking if I reported the threat. Yes, I did report the threat. Yeah, so someone's asking if Barry will be allowed to talk with his daughters outside of once he gets out. Yes, of course. That was something the defense talked about, how he just wants to go home to his girls. He plans to be with his girls and not have any interaction with the potential witnesses that have been mentioned in the preliminary hearing. Yes, so Barry Morphew, another stipulation is that Barry Morphew will have to go to court, be present in court for all court proceedings. So for the motion hearing in November, he will have to be in person to that. Someone's asking, why did Mallory leave the courtroom with a PI right after judge granted Barry bond? That's a great question. I don't know. I didn't get to ask Mallory that. I'm not exactly sure what she was doing with the private investigator. Do you want to talk about how the defense mentioned that he didn't have a lot of money? Because one of the things during the talk about his bond and how much bond it should be, the state was saying, he had they estimated at least $3 million that Barry Morphew had because of the sale of the home and assets to his businesses and things like that. And the defense was saying, he's used a lot of that money for his lawyers, for court and things like that. So didn't have that much money is what the defense was saying.
She was also saying too that part of the reason that $10 million would be unreasonable is because obviously being in jail, he hasn't been able to work for the last few months. He also has daughters, one that's currently in college and one that, I don't know if Macy plans to go to college, but I'm assuming. So she kind of implied too that obviously he still has the two girls that he would need to take care of, and not having a job for the last 4 months and the amount of publicity that this has gotten would make it hard for him to find a job anywhere, probably in Chafee County for a while, because, she used the phrase, something about his name or his reputation, but pretty much just implying that this has put a bad light on him, so it would be hard for him to find a job. So having a bond that high would just be unreasonable considering his financial situation the last few months with all the court stuff.
Yeah, if you're just joining us, we're talking about Barry Morphew being able to be released on bond, $500,000 cash bond, when he waits for his trial, which is his trial is set for May 3rd of 2022. If you have questions, I'm gonna try to answer, but we're probably gonna get off here soon, just because we're getting to a spotty service. So we'll just answer a couple more questions. Someone's asking me if I'll interview Barry again. I'm not sure.
I'm sure we'll try. Don't know what response we'll get.
Someone's asking if there was a motion from the girls about Suzanne. There was during the preliminary hearing when they were showing photos of her last known proof of life photo. They were very emotional then, and and then they were emotional when they were talking about her affair as well. Someone's someone's asking if I think he will stick around for trial. I mean, I don't know. I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, I think he's
Legally he has to,
yeah, legally he has to. So yeah, so someone's asking like why wasn't Jeff Puckett put on the protective order. I guess he just hasn't told the prosecution that he wanted to. I mean, people can still be added, I believe, to the protective order. Oh, people are tuning in from Australia. Hi.
Hello, matey.
That is not what they say.
I know, that's more like a pirate. It didn't come out right.
Someone's asking if everything will be televised publicly going forward. That will still be up to the judge to decide. I highly doubt it, but you never know. That's something that on the November 9th, they'll be talking about that because they're talking about how, well, the defense has filed a motion to limit the pretrial publicity as well. Someone's watching from the Philippines. Hi.
Hello. I don't know anything in
Someone's asking if it's like house arrest with the ankle bracelet. It's not. I mean, he can travel around Chafee County. He can go about his business. He could work.
He just has to stay within county lines.
Yeah. So someone's asking about the November 9th hearing. It's a motions hearing. They're going to, I guess the defense had filed a couple of motions yesterday. One was a discovery violation, and the other was a violation of the court order to limit pretrial publicity. All right, let's answer one more question.
Make it a good one, guys. Dig deep.
Do you want to say anything else? No. Someone's asking if there was a mention of Barry's cousin who recorded the fake plea video and his military friend. That, the military friend was mentioned just about how Barry Morphew searched for Suzanne, but as far as I believe you're thinking of Trevor Knoll, that was not, he was never mentioned in the preliminary hearing or today. That's a good question. How large is Chafee County? Let me see. I think it's pretty large, but, and you got to think about, there's like all these mountains around it too, so.
It's very mountainous terrain.
Yeah.
Lots of hills and windy roads and trees everywhere you look.
Let me see if I can spell. All right. I wish I could, maybe I could turn around the camera so I can show people. Oh, I can. All right. Now let me make sure this is Chafee County, Colorado. So this is the Google search, guys, so.
I'm pretty sure if you just type in Chafee County, Colorado, it should give you like the population.
This is just images.
But like, don't put size. Just put Chafee County, Colorado, and it should pull up with like the population.
Sorry, guys. Bear with me. Okay, yeah. So it's population of 19,476, according to the 2020 census.
She's new to technology, guys. It's okay.
Yeah. I feel like people want to see the size of it, though, you know?
Do you like square footage or like...
Here's a Chafee County map. So that's the size of it. Let me...
Kind of looks like Florida.
There it goes. There is an airport in Salida, if people are wondering.
If you want to fly in, come visit.
Someone is saying that there's 330,000 residents for the whole county of Chafee County.
Why didn't you say 19?
I don't know why. All right, guys. I think we're gonna sign off.
Sayonara.
I don't know if you can see Sarah. Do you want to say bye? Thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. If you missed a little bit of what I was saying earlier, please, once I publish this, you can be able to go back and watch it again. Again, Barry Morphew will be able to be out on bond, $500,000 cash only, until as he awaits his trial, which will be May of 2022. Thanks again for watching us tonight, and see you next time. Bye.